When I tell you that Blood Typers is a horror game that involves you killing a bunch of brain-eating zombies by using your typing skills, I don't blame you if the first thing you picture is Typing of the Dead. But that's not the right comparison, because this brand new release from Outer Brain Studios is more akin to the classic survival horror games of the 1990s, especially Resident Evil. It's the kind of adventure game where the ammo is limited and players control everything by typing out words on their keyboard. Try your best not to get bitten or worse, a hand cramp when I review Blood Typers, out now on PC. This is the story of a group of independent filmmakers who are offered an opportunity to work with the legendary horror director Vincent Fessler. What makes this job so unusual is that Fessler hasn't been heard from in 5 years. Yeah, not even a single photograph from the paparazzi. Has he become reclusive in his old age, or is there something more sinister going on here? Trust me, no matter what the answer is, the film crew has no idea what they're about to come face to face with. All this is an excuse to get you into what appears to be an old abandoned studio. Or maybe it's a mansion. You know what, it's kind of hard to tell because it's dark, it's in complete disrepair, and oh yeah, it's full of zombies. If this was like Typing of the Dead or other fast-paced action games where you have unlimited firepower, then that wouldn't be a problem. But this is a survival horror game, so there's limited bullets and barely enough health items lying around. We can't just barge in guns a-blazing. We're gonna need to play this a bit more strategically. Now, the first thing you need to know about Blood Typers is that you control everything through typing on the keyboard. You want to walk to the other side of the room? Well, then you're going to need to type the corresponding letters. Need to pick up an item? Then you'll just need to type out a phrase like grab bread. This also goes for turning off safe mode on a computer, saving at a checkpoint, eating tasty food items you've collected, and even reloading your guns. And that brings us to the combat. Like everything else, we fight the zombies by typing, but there's usually more to it than that. It really all comes down to the type of weapon that you're using at the time. If you're going for a melee kill, then you'll need to type out several words. Thankfully, the zombies will get stunned for a brief moment every time you correctly type one of the words, giving you enough time to finish them off. Now, if you're packing an SMG, then you may only need to type the first few letters of each word. The shotgun, on the other hand, will require you to type out a full word, but it does a massive amount of damage to the surrounding horde. Other weapons include a sword, magnum gun, incendiary rounds, and even a crossbow. Instead of being one long adventure, Blood Typers is split up into 4 different chapters, with the 5th one coming in the near future. While these different chapters may differ in size and complexity, they all largely play out the same way. The goal for each level is to investigate your surroundings in order to locate 5 red video cassettes and then give them to a haunted television set. Once you've done that, you'll get an item to repair the elevator, allowing you to escape this part of the story. Of course, in order to do any of this, you're also going to need to track down blue and gold keys that'll unlock, you guessed it, blue and gold doors. What complicates this is that there's always a zombie timer ticking down. This means that even if you do manage to kill all the undead beasts that are just stumbling around in the studio, a bunch more will rush in when the timer runs out. And then I mentioned that they're going to be a lot more aggressive when that happens. This often happens when you're cornered in a room, forced to watch as they break through the doors and just flood in. This is the kind of thing that you're actually going to have to plan for, so make sure you have enough bullets and health items ready. Now, one thing that I really do like about this game is how varied the 8 characters are. And I don't just mean in their appearance, but also in their stats and their perks. I ended up being a big fan of Ophelia, who may have less health than some of the tougher characters, but she's agile, is better at knocking back the zombies, and most importantly, can hold 3 extra items in her inventory. I can't tell you how big of a deal that ended up being. Other characters will have a chance to automatically dodge the zombies, or will speed up how quickly they eat or reload. Some of these stats and perks will have a real impact on how you tackle each situation, and the people who get into the online multiplayer mode will enjoy the challenge of using the different heroes. Unfortunately, Blood Typers breaks down in a lot of extremely predictable ways. The main one is that without direct movement control, the player is basically screwed whenever they're surrounded by zombies. You see, because you have to type so many words in order to kill each one of the brain-eating monsters, it's incredibly easy to get overwhelmed by several at once. And all that's before the game introduces the far tougher zombies that have more armor, require more keystrokes, and are just all around harder to beat. And even if you do manage to escape these ambushes, you're gonna take a lot of cheap hits before making it out to safety. That's annoying because it's the kind of thing that wouldn't happen if the player had direct control over the character on screen. This ultimately plays into another big problem that I had, which was the difficulty spike found in the last 2 chapters. You see, Blood Typers lulls the single player into its trap with 2 relatively easy stages right at the top, making it all seem like it's totally doable without any help. But let me tell you, all that changes in the 3rd chapter when there are at least 10 times the amount of enemies after you. Even with the liberal checkpointing, the game basically devolves into a shoot-'em-up where the zombie horde won't let up, no matter how many you take out. Unless you're extremely lucky, most people are going to need a second person to even come close to finishing this game. That's just not how it should be when you're playing on the default difficulty. Speaking of which, there are a number of questionable design decisions all built around the fact that this is a multiplayer game. One problem is that you can't pause the game, even when you're playing through it solo. The other issue is that you can't save the game mid-chapter and then expect to pick it up at a later date. In this game, you either beat the chapter in one sitting or you start all over again with a new, randomly constructed level to explore. In that sense, Blood Typers feels more like one of those multiplayer-focused action games like Left 4 Dead, yet the rest of the game has the pace and the atmosphere of an offline Resident Evil outing. Look, despite those issues, Blood Typers actually has a lot going for it. As an online multiplayer game, I could see how it could be fun to run these chapters over and over and over again. The layouts are big enough to support multiple survivors, and the randomly generated stages go a long way to keep the chapters fresh. I also like the look of the game, which is a nice balance of scary and cartoony. There's just enough variety in the locations to keep the levels from feeling too repetitive, and I actually really like the look of the different characters. But more than anything else, I really love how this game manages to evolve the typing genre beyond simple on-rail shooting. While it's a little finicky at times, I really like the freedom that we're given when it comes to exploring the studio, picking up items, and battling zombies. The developer's onto something here, and it really wouldn't surprise me if they find ways of improving and streamlining the process in future updates and sequels. Yeah, Blood Typers has a few problems, but both survival horror and typing fans will eat this game up. That is, unless the zombies get to it first. If you're a fan of either typing games or survival horror, then Blood Typers is an absolute must-play. While it certainly has some balancing issues to contend with, there's actually a lot to like about this atmospheric mashup. It looks good, it's easy to control, and there's enough firepower here to satisfy fans looking for a little action. And you know what? It's even better when you team up with friends online. Unfortunately, a difficulty spike towards the end will turn a fun solo experience into utter frustration, and it sure would be nice if I could pause the game. But you know what? Outside of that, Blood Typers has a strong concept that could use a little bit more refining. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite survival horror game? Look, I know the genre is pretty much dominated by Resident Evil and Silent Hill, but there's also Alone in the Dark and Dead Space and really a whole lot of other smaller releases that scared the shit out of players. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with, something. I promise. While you wait for that something to show up, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.